Welcome everybody to my envelope mini album tutorial. If you want to take a screenshot of this is some of the cutting and folding instructions that you will need for this album. And then next I'm going to take 5 sheets of double-sided pattern paper, 12 by 12, and this is using the Winnie the Pooh Christmas collection from Echo Park Paper. So what I'm going to do is place that onto my 12 by 12 scoreboard, and I'm going to first score at 6. Now this will be your top fold, so just keep that in mind when you are figuring out which side you want to go up as far as the pattern that's going to be on the back of the paper. Then next I'm going to score at 3.5, and then at 8.5. Now you can modify this if you want it a little bit wider or a little bit more narrow. You can just adjust the sizes of where you are to score on that. And I'm just going to repeat with the remaining of my paper, and then we'll come back and we'll start cutting everything. Okay, now moving on to my last sheet of paper that I need to score, and you'll notice here that I'm scoring there at 6 to go in the direction of the pattern. So if you have a directional pattern of paper that you're using, like the little poos here, you want to make sure that that is being scored properly so that everything, when you fold everything up, your patterns aren't upside down. Okay, so once that's done, then I'm going to take all of my paper and then I'm going to start folding those in half. And our first fold will be along the 6-inch mark. Just make sure that all of your edges match up. Then use your bone folder or something with a straight edge on there to give you a nice even crease. And then after we have all this folded in, we'll start moving onto the cutting of the sides to make our little pockets. Okay, so now we're going to cut along the 6-inch mark up to the intersecting lines on both sides. I'm just going to use my long scissors, and you'll really want to make 2 cuts, so cut kind of there on the top of the score line and also on the bottom of the score line. It will leave quite a bit of a little gap there, but it's not going to matter. You're not going to see this part, but it does make it easier when you get ready to fold it down and dog-ear it, so you don't have too much bulk there on the edges. Okay, next you're just going to fold over your edges or dog-ear your paper. Now if you really wanted to get technical, you could use your scoreboard here, But again, none of this is going to show, so I just kind of fold it down until that, till the fold meets the edge of that paper there along the other score line. So just like that, but don't go all the way to the edge. You'll want to come just before you get to that crease, or it will bunch up like that right there and it's not going to lay nice and flat. But if that does happen and you've already folded your paper, just kind of trim the edge. It's not a big deal. So again, just fold down the other side now and then get a good crease. And then you're going to glue those down. You can glue it with glue or you can use adhesive tape, whichever you want to use, or you could trim these off. But I do like the look of the folded look. It keeps it from, gives it a nice clean edge, and then you don't have to worry about being perfectly straight if you were to cut that part. Now I did get this idea. This was actually, the envelope part of this came from a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I will link her tutorial below. She actually used this for a card holder. So if you're giving like cards, you can just make these. So this is where I got the idea, and then I just used this and made the mini album pages out of it. Okay, so now you see that's how that's going to fold, and then you fold over at the top. So that will make our completed pockets. Okay, now I've chosen to use my 1/2" sequin tape, and I'm just going to apply this to the inside flaps. Okay, so you'll see I'm just applying it right there along the edge, and then I'll do it on the other flap as well. And I've chosen to use the tape because I wanted an even depth for the pocket, and I wanted everything to match so I could use a certain size journal cards to go inside. So that's the reason why I chose to use the tape. Now I'm going to remove the backing off of the tape on the left side panel first, and just press that into place, and then fold over your right-sided flap on top of that, so they will overlap, and that will create that little pocket there, that one little tuck. Then you'll also have the pocket at the top, and then we'll make our pocket on the inside will be our next step. Okay, now that we have all of our flaps glued down, you'll see the inside of that, the way it looks when all the paper is just up and not folded over. So we're going to create our gusset paper next. So I just took a piece of the 6x6 paper from the paper pad, but use any scrap paper that you have, okay? So just cut a little strip there. I'm going to say maybe about 3/4 of an inch wide, and then just snip it off there to be just a little bit less than the width of the paper that you're working with there. You're going to fold that in half. Now you can score this if you want to do that, but I'm just folding it in half and then just giving it a good crease, because this will be on the inside, not seen, so it doesn't have to be even paper that matches. But anyway, a good heavy paper. You don't want anything that's going to tear when it's folded over. So just apply your glue, or you can use your adhesive tape, whichever you prefer, and just attach it or apply it there along that one side. And then we're going to glue that in place at the very bottom. Leave just a little bit of an edge so it's not showing when the paper is folded down on top, and press that into place. And then we're going to come back with glue on the top flap of your gusset paper, and then we'll fold over that top flap of the pocket page, and you'll have your little hidden inside pocket. Okay, now that I have all 5 of my pages, my pocket pages ready, I'm going to make my covers. So I'm taking that pre-cut chipboard paper. I have 2 sheets of 5 1/4 inches by 6 1/4 inches, and I'm choosing some scrapbook paper, and I'm making a cut about a half of an inch to an inch bigger than my chipboard paper all the way around. So we're going to prep that. I'm going to cut those twice for the front and back covers, and then we'll start covering that. Okay, I have to admit, y'all, that my width of my paper here is not really quite as much as I needed, but it's going to work anyway. So just goes to show, just go with the flow on this. I could recut it, but I really wanted this paper for my cover. I wish I had made it just a little bit wider, but we're going to get it to work. So you'll see I'm just placing it here on my scoreboard and making a determination of where I need to make my score line so I can fold it around the edges of the chipboard. Now you could measure and then take it to your scoreboard and make your score lines there, but I just was kind of winging this part, and that's the reason why I'm choosing to just place my chipboard on there and score around it. So it all ended up working out just fine. So whichever method you want to use will be perfectly fine. So we're just going to complete that for both chipboard pieces, and then we'll move on to constructing the spine part. Okay, now that all 4 edges are scored, I'm going to trim away the edges there where it's going to fold around the chipboard. Kind of miter those corners. Now I just eyeballed this part, so if you want to get, again, if you want to get a little bit more technical with that, I would probably fold it around the chipboard first, just to make sure you're not cutting your edges too short. But I knew that I'm going to be using some little metal pieces, some little metal corners, so I wasn't really worried about it being too short. But if you're not using metal corners on this, I would make sure that you're not cutting those edges too short. And you'll see here, one side is a little bit too short, but again, I wasn't worried about that. But if you are, I would cut it just a little bit past that score line to give you a little bit more room to work with there. So you just want to fold it really good, and then we're going to insert our chipboard and get everything glued into place. Okay, so next I have chosen to use that paper tape again, and I'm going to attach all the way around the perimeter. This is going to be the inside where those flaps of the cover paper is going to attach. So I want to do all 4 corners, and then I'll move to the front. You'll want to add glue or adhesive tape to that front part of your chipboard too, so your paper does not bubble up. Okay, now that I have the front cover secured with those 2 strips of paper tape, I'm going to move to the inside, and we're going to secure the flaps down. And then I'll repeat with the second cover, and then we'll move on to building our spine. Okay, now moving on to the spine, and I did have to make an adjustment here on the measurement because I'm using a 5-page instead of 4-page. Now the instructions at the very beginning of the video are correct and has been adjusted. But here you'll see at the top, my two covers, I had to completely rip apart and take off that cover. The spine, it wasn't wide enough. So I've recut my chipboard to be 2 3/4 inches wide instead of the 1 3/4 inches wide. And I'm just cutting my pattern paper a little bit bigger in height and about 1 inch extra on each side for the width so that I have enough to attach to the back of my covers. So again, I'm just getting my placement here. I went ahead and glued that in place, and then I'm going to score around it, and then we'll start folding that in place, and next we'll attach it to the back of our chipboard walls. Okay, now I'm going to glue the flap down, and you could actually cut apart or cut away these 2 little flaps there at the edges if you wanted to, but I like the clean look of that. And of course you do want to leave that portion of the paper intact to cover up the chipboard edge. So I'm just gluing all that in place. And then as I'm making my crease there, kind of make an adjustment to your paper. You don't want it to be too tight when you have everything glued in place. So you'll notice I'm kind of just working that paper around, making sure that everything is going to fold up nicely and that I don't have my paper too short on the edges. So again, just fold that down after it's been glued and then fold up your edges just to make sure that you're giving yourself enough play in the paper and not making that too tight. Okay, now we're going to attach our spine to the inside of the front and back covers. And as you can see, I'm using my liquid glue, just giving it a nice coat of glue here. Of course, you could also use your adhesive tape if you wanted, but I think this just gives it a little bit better coverage. And I can also make adjustments when I'm using the liquid glue, so if I don't get everything just nice and straight and lined up, then I can make a little bit of an adjustment pretty quick with the liquid glue. Okay, now we're going to work on the binding portion of the book. This is where you'll need that 9.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece of heavyweight cardstock. I'm using 110 pound Nina cardstock for this. The directions at the bottom of your instruction sheet are correct. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by scoring at 1 inch. And then my next score line is 1.25 inch. And then what I like to do is take that part, go ahead and fold it up on that last score line there, move that out of the way, and then just line it up again with the edge of my scoreboard here. And then I'm going to score every 1/2 inch 14 times. When I get to the end of that 14th line, I'm going to score again at 1/4 inch, and that should leave me roughly a 1 inch tail at the very end. Okay, now it's time to start folding along all of those lines. We're going to have a 1/4 inch valley at the very front, and then you're going to fold 2 pieces together with a 1/2 inch valley in between, and you'll just repeat that process all the way down your paper until you have 5 peaks with the valleys in between, and there at the very end you'll have that other 1/4 inch valley and then your 1 inch wall pieces. Okay, now that we have everything folded up, I'm just going to do a little comparison here over my spine. Make sure it's not too wide, so that I can make any adjustments that I need to, but that's going to fit perfectly. So next you can use your liquid glue here, but I chose to use my 1/2 inch paper tape since those score lines are 1/2 inch apart. I decided to use that here. You're going to use that to hold your peaks together. So you'll need to do this 5 different times to form your peaks. So I'm just going to do that there. You can obviously use liquid glue, and I've done that before. You'll just have to allow for some drying time before you move on to the next step after this. So you'll see we have our first peak formed there, and then we're going to leave that 1/2 inch valley space between. That will be flat, and then we'll move on to adhering our next peaks together. So we'll apply that, and we'll repeat this all the way down so we have 5 peaks and then the valleys in between. Okay, now that I have everything taped together, I have a 1 inch flap at the front, followed by a 1/4 inch valley, a peak, a valley, a peak, a valley, all the way to the end, and then I have another 1/4 inch valley, followed by that 1 inch flap. And here I'm just double checking my measurements to make sure that it's not too wide for my spine, and everything looks good. It measures up, and this portion of this binding covers up all of that chipboard underneath there. I have plenty of paper coming up on the edges, so I don't need to attach any more paper, but if that is a little bit short, you can actually cover that chipboard with paper if you wanted to. And now I'm just going to apply a liberal amount of my Barely Art glue all along the flat part of the back of this binding part, okay? Not those 2 end flaps that will be attached to the actual back covers of the book. So we just want it along this portion right here, and then I'll attach it over the spine. Okay, now I just run my fingers in between the peaks, over the valleys, really to get the glue nice and flat, everything nice and flat and secured on there. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach those 2 end flaps to the backs of our covers. Okay, my apologies. I'm not sure what happened to this part of my video. I think I had turned a light on or something, so I apologize that you cannot see this as well. But all I did next was I took some of the solid paper and I cut it just a little bit shorter than the inside cover, and then just attached that all the way up to where our spine is. And then I'm going to take the opening of one of the pockets, and I'm going to apply some glue right in the opening on both sides. And then I'm going to take it and slide it down over one of the peaks. Now, of course, you'll repeat this for all 5 pages. Just make sure that it's lined up and not too long, so it doesn't go past the top or the bottom of the book. And like I said, just glue there along the top or the inside, both sides, the top and the bottom of the inside, just a little bit, maybe a ½ inch into the inside of the book, and then that will create our side pocket. Okay, now all of those 5 pages are attached, and what I'm going to do next is show you how I took my 1.5 inch actually, circle punch, and just created a small little inset so you can create a little pull tab on the side of that pocket. So all I'm doing is taking my punch, and you'll see that I made marks with a marker right there. That shows me the halfway point and just gives me a good idea of how far I need to go down. So I just line the edge of my paper up with that. Now I'm just punching through one side of the pocket instead of both sides. So just like that, and I'm gonna keep those little half pieces of paper because I'm going to use those for my tabs on the pullouts that go inside of that pocket. So you'll see here that those 4x6 journal cards fit in there. Now I did trim these down so that they fit nicely. There's a 4x4 journal card. I used the 3x4 journal cards. I added some of my own tags inside of there, but mostly everything is from the Winnie the Pooh Christmas collection. And you'll notice I added another little flap there at the front just to kind of decorate that part. Attached a journal card there too. And then here is how I decorated the pullouts. I just used some little craft sacks that I had in my stash. I'm just going to glue the half circle pieces together so they don't open up. And then I want the rounded part to kind of stick out the edge of the book, so I'm going to take the flat part and glue it to the back of my little envelope or my little sack. So I'll put a little bit of glue there and then just attach it to the back. And then all of the following pictures after this part, you'll see all the different embellishments that I used and everything to make this just a really fun, chunky book. And the reason why I did the 5 pages is so that you could actually make this into a 25 Days of Christmas. Now, I did not number this book, but you could definitely do that if you wanted to do, if you're making one similar to this, and see how cute that looks with that little piece of tab there poking out. And I used washi tape on my tags. And then here is another pull-out that I made just using some of that solid paper. I took the 12-inch and I cut it 4 inches across, and then I just scored that. I'm going to show you here where I scored. And finding my placement. So I scored this at 5 inches, and then I scored it on down at the very bottom. I scored at 10 1/4. And then of course just folded all that up and used my corner rounder. And then I have plenty of room there on the front and the inside and on the back for pictures and journaling or whatever you want to add on that. And then that slides down right inside of that big pocket, and then I've got room there on that front little tuck part to add my other little card. Okay, now let's do a quick walkthrough of our completed book. Now, of course, this is just waiting on pictures and journaling to go inside, but I've used some of the frames and tags and ephemera and title pieces, all of those cute little packs that come from Echo Park. You'll see those brass corners that I added. I stamped the date onto a craft tag and added my bow and my bell. And then here's how the front looks. And you probably noticed too on the front, I did wrap this colorful baker's twine around the spine of the book, and I just attached that with Barely Art glue, and it works just fine. So there's how that looks. Just kind of gives it a little bit more texture. And then moving on to the next pocket, and then I have my little flip down journal card. And then over here we have our first little tuck pocket with that 4x4 card in it. Buttons from my stash. I put tabs on all of these cards and added a 3x3 photo mat on the back that I attached with some foam adhesive. And then all of the front pockets got the adorable 4x6 cards there, and I just rounded those with a ticket stub punch. And then here on the side is that little peekaboo pull out. Again, that's just that little envelope with a library card, washi tape from my stash, and then that little punched half circle there that I use for my tab. That comes from right there. And then I like to use hot glue sometimes on my stickers just to give it a little bit of dimension. Foam tape sometimes makes it a little too bulky, but I don't want them completely flat, so I'll use hot glue to attach some of those pieces with. And then, so that's that piece, and we'll move on through. You can see more tabs, and we'll just finish walking through here. You can see how I decorated some of these, some I left plain. And then here are those completed and embellished pull-outs from the top. And again, all of this stuff, except for some of the washi tape and the buttons, are from Echo Part paper. So be sure to check that out. Okay, let's just finish taking a look at all of the completed pages. Okay, this is the last page of our book. I appreciate you all stopping by and taking time to watch this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will be crafting with you soon. Thanks so much.